Hello, I'm Chelsea Poe, and you're listening to the Performers Pod. This is a space for performers to talk about our industry in a real way that we usually aren't given in the press. Welcome. This is the 10th episode. I'm so happy so many of you have gotten a chance to hear all these different stories about this industry. Just in the first 10 episodes, I feel like I've learned so much. Today, we're talking to XBiz award-winning performer Ela Darling. Again, if you want to support the pod, you can become a monthly member of my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Chelsea Poe. Today, we talked to Ela about her unique entry into the world of porn, new anti-porn laws in Texas, VR porn, her work as president of APAC, and so much more. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I am with one of my favorite people in the industry, Ela Darling. Say hello.
Sorry, my audio cut out. Hi, I'm Ela Darling.
Oh, yeah, I really love just how outspoken you've been in the industry, as well as like you just made some really cool porn. I met you on a set. I think it was actually my first AVN. I was PAing for you and Draven Star and like running to get you guys like Gatorade or something. I was
Thank
just
you for
like,
that.
yeah, you're totally welcome. And it was like so just like fun to meet you. And I've seen so much of your activism with APAC and everything. And yeah, I'm just looking to get to know you more. And I don't really know anything about VR porn. I just find it so interesting that you like went into that so strongly and just like it's a whole kind of different reality.
It is, and girl, I will talk your ear off if you get me started.
I'm really excited to hear about that stuff. So, can we start with like where you're from and how you got into this industry?
For sure. So I grew up in Texas, which I live in again. And okay, so I got a master's degree in library and information science when I was 21. And I had some pretty negative views on the adult industry. I thought that
Mm-hmm.
those poor women are victims and all of this nonsense. But I was inquisitive enough, I guess, to sort of question my own beliefs about it. Like, okay, if they really are so, sad and traumatized, like, why do they all seem to be so happy and have so much fun? So I decided when I was a reference librarian at the age of 22 to answer a Craigslist ad for hardcore bondage, but it wasn't nude. I'd been modeling since 18. I was 22 at the time. I had never done anything nude or even like lingerie. And this sounded like just a little, audacious enough that I'm going to try it out. I'm probably going to be miserable. It's going to be a bad experience, but at least I'll know, like, firsthand sort of like what that world is like.
Yeah, just be like that. You can say you at least did it once. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I did it, and I had such a good time. The director was incredibly professional and incredibly kind. I felt very respected on set. My boundaries, I didn't really even know what my boundaries were. And so the director sort of helped me formulate boundaries in a professional context on set. I made more in an hour than I made in a day as a librarian, which I had to earn a master's degree to even work that job. And I felt more respect and more humanized working on set than I did, in my professional career. And so I started doing some more fetish stuff. I did my first official nude photo shoot with someone who would eventually become my ex-husband. Um,
Oh,
it was fine.
having exes in porn that you have porn of is like way too real of a thing.
It is. It's like your diary on film for everyone to enjoy. But yeah, and so after, I don't know, a month or two of sort of skirting that world, I decided, like, I really like this. My master's degree isn't going anywhere. I can be a librarian again if I want to, but if I want to explore this, I should probably do it now. And so I moved to Los Angeles when I was 23 in 2009, and started doing porn. I did girl porn for the duration of my marriage. I did boy girl porn just long enough to pay my bills and realize I'm just not that fucking straight. And around that time, I started doing VR porn. And I co-founded one of the first VR porn companies.
Hmm.
And we had a lot of firsts in our sort of trajectory. And that's sort of that's kind of a summary of my career.
That's so exciting. So, did you like start doing that bondage stuff? Did you fly out to California or were you still in Texas?
I was actually in Massachusetts. I was a librarian in a small town just outside of Boston, and the bondage gig was in like Western Massachusetts.
Oh yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, so I drove out and it was really great. It was conversationpiece.cc. The guy who runs it is a real sweetheart. I don't know if he runs it anymore, but the guy I worked with was a real dear.
It's truly amazing the amount of porn that's made in Massachusetts. It actually came up in the last podcast I had too. I've shot all over that state, weirdly enough.
Yeah, they get right down, baby.
And like it's no one has any clue what's going on, I feel like, in the state of Massachusetts.
No, they don't. There's sort of this sort of middle conservative mindset, and they all, not all, but many of the people in Massachusetts are these sort of, they feel very rural, even when they're in an urban environment,
Hmm.
and just don't, I don't want to break their heart and tell them that there's smut going on every which way. They're just not seeing it.
Yeah, definitely. I've shot in like Western Massachusetts. You probably know Bella Vendetta. Did you ever work with them out in Western Mass?
I don't think I did, and now I feel like I missed out.
Oh, they're always making stuff there, so I'm sure there's always more opportunities. So, what did you feel going into that first bondage shoot? Were you like really nervous or were you feeling pretty confident because you did do modeling before that?
I was very nervous because I had never been paid to model before. It was all, kind of amateur model mayhem stuff that was just
Mm.
something that made me feel like I was doing something creative. And so I was very nervous. I was a little concerned, but not enough to really worry about my safety. I think I probably texted someone just like, hey, if you don't hear from me, look for my body here. But yeah, pretty much as soon as I got there, I was expecting some like Ron Jeremy looking motherfucker who was going to call me sweetheart and try to grab my ass. And instead,
Yeah.
yeah, but he looked like a youth minister. He was also an ex-teenage goth. I think he was playing some like really rad goth music on his, speakers throughout the house. He had really cool art prints. It very much felt like um, the complete opposite of whatever I was expecting. It was
Hmm.
very, I don't know, just very professional, cordial, and just utterly respectful. So
Yeah, I feel like there's so much like anticipation to your first shoots, and like especially I felt like being on set with men. I'm like, oh no, they're gonna pull some gross stuff or say something really fetishizing or something creepy, and it just like really didn't happen, at least early on.
yeah,
Or like I feel like that was like later in the industry where I'm like, oh no, there are people like this. But so
yeah.
like, oh, go on.
I think that's not the norm. It's very much the exception. But I feel like people who are not in the industry or even like adjacent to the industry assume that that is what happens all the time. And I guess it's just, I mean, it's like any other workplace. Like there are some shitty people. There are
Hmm.
some days that are not a fun day at work. And there's, some sets that you do it, you get paid for it. You don't necessarily regret it, but it's maybe not for you and you don't want to do it again, but that isn't necessarily like a trauma. Not that there aren't instances of people being
Hmm.
traumatized. I don't want to
Yeah,
downplay
of
that, but
course.
it's not the norm the way people think it is.
Hmm. Were there like any performers or filmmakers that were making porn at the time that made you interested, or were you more just like trying to see what it was really like outside of your own like views of it?
I was really trying to expand my own boundaries and worldview. I
Mhm.
hadn't really put much time into researching it because there's so much that it's just overwhelming as soon as you start to look into it. And I didn't know who was where. Now that I've been in the industry for goddamn near 12 years at this point, I have a sense of like,
Congrats. It's a huge accomplishment.
thank you. But I know like, okay, these people are in LA, these people are in Vegas, those people are in Europe, that's not happening. So now I get that sense. But early on when I was very much on the outside looking in, I didn't know like certainly not all porn is shot in the same neighborhood,
Mhm.
which I mean, much of it is actually in
Yeah, in
retrospect.
LA, it's like the same like four mansions.
Yeah, yeah. You really start once you shoot those four mansions over and over and over again, you just start to recognize them when you see porn. It's like, oh,
100%. Yeah. Where you're like,
yeah,
oh, I recognize that weird sculpture thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very much not something that I was researching in terms of like I want to go be a porn star.
Hmm.
More so, it was like I want to see what this world is like, and I want to have this experience. And hey, the money's awesome, so yes, please.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I was living in a small town in Michigan. So whenever I did go out and shoot, it felt like the money went so far where people in the Bay were like, oh, it's a $400 shoot. I'm just like, wow, that's like 2 months of rent, you know? Like I
Yeah,
feel like
for
it just
sure.
really depends like where you are, because it can go so much further than when you're in California and you're shooting. That money doesn't really go that far. Yeah,
Exactly.
were you like watching any porn at the time, or were you like just pretty like new to all of it?
I was new to all of it. I've never really watched porn.
Hmm.
Not because I think poorly of it. I guess at one point I did have some negative views on porn, but it's just never really been something that gets me going. It's not something I need. I'm incredibly sexual. I'll wake up at 7 and jerk off until noon some days.
Oh
But I
wow.
Yeah, but for me, masturbation has always been something that sort of occupies part of my brain so that I can focus on something else. I have ADHD. I wasn't diagnosed and medicated until, later in my 20s. So I graduated undergrad in 3 years and I got my master's in one. So I got all of it in 4 years. And the way that I did that without being medicated or diagnosed was I would study my textbooks and jerk off because the sort of active part of my brain would be occupied so that I could actually study and learn.
I feel like you need to make a movie about that, just like you in college, just jerking off and studying the entire time. Like, that's a movie right there. Like, that's
Fantastic.
how people think porn stars go to college.
It's true. Oh my god, you're so right. But yeah, it was just, I mean, it's ADHD, baby. And
Yeah.
no worry.
Did you like get on Adderall or Concerta or something like that?
Yeah, I eventually got on Adderall in my mid 20s, and that is I don't think I would be functional without it at this point. I
Hmm.
kind of transitioned away from performing primarily into sort of working behind the scenes as like a marketing executive
Hmm.
and producer back in like 2016. And because I'm working in a more like, I don't want to say professional capacity to diminish the professionalism
Hmm.
of being a porn performer, but more of a corporate, I suppose, capacity.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do my job if I wasn't medicated. It's, you know, love it.
Yeah, I got diagnosed with ADD, I think, in high school. And when I was on Adderall, I got so much stuff done, but I felt like I just like wasn't a person anymore though. It just like
Yeah.
took away so much of like my creativity, where I'm like, wow, I can do amazing at school. I can do amazing at all these things, but I just felt like my creativity wasn't really there.
Oh yeah, that doesn't work. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. I'm very much a proponent of uh, diagnoses and treating mental health in whatever capacity serves you. But what works for me doesn't work for everyone. Not
Hmm.
everyone is gonna, graduate college by jerking off onto textbooks.
That's so cool. Like that's your story. You were like, I didn't really watch a lot of porn. I just kind of jerked off with my textbooks. That's just so awesome.
I feel like it's
So
very on
was
brand.
Yeah, definitely. Like I feel like that's like the whole academic porn star almost trope to it, you know?
Yes.
So like was there a first scene or like a moment that made you realize that this is something more than just like doing a few shoots to like experiment and learn more about this industry?
Mm. Yeah, so I moved to LA to do porn and to get married. And one of those was an excellent choice, and one of those was fine, I guess. Um, but for me, like what I consider my first porn scene was for fucking machines at kink.com.
Mhm.
And they hired me, and it was such an incredible experience for me. I mean, at this point, I was 23. My background was, working for a community library. I was not
Mhm.
someone who felt extravagant or catered to or any of that. Like I didn't travel for work because they couldn't afford it. So to have someone hire me, fly me out across the state, pick me up at the airport, feed me, do my makeup, do my hair, choose
Mhm.
wardrobe, like it felt like such a grandiose experience. And I felt just so, I don't know, continental, I suppose. And that was really a big moment for me. It was, it was my first real porn scene in that I was doing like hardcore penetration and all that, but
Mhm.
also just being cared for in that way to perform. I felt very, it was very much a feeling like I have arrived. I had not, but I felt like it at the time. Um, yeah, and it was a solo scene, and it was they were doing a thing where it was like they would bring out three girls, and they would all do solo scenes on the fucking machines, and then the viewers would vote on their favorite, and the one they voted for would be flown back to do a full shoot with Bobby Starr. So she was, I think, the
Mhm.
first like performer I worked with, and that
That
was
was like definitely in the golden era of kink, I think, when Bobby Starr was still there, when Princess Donna was still there. That's like, was it at the Armory at the time?
It was at the Armory,
Hmm.
which itself was an incredible experience, like this historic building, and they want me to
Yeah.
show my pussy.
Um, oh, you just cut out for a sec. It's all
Oh,
good.
I'm sorry.
I feel like that's just part of Zoom.
It is. Zoom.
Yeah, I feel like the Armory, yeah, I started working there as a cam model, I think like 2 days after I moved to California. And just like when you first go there, you're like, wow, this is a historic building. There were like heavyweight fights there in like the 30s, and like they brief you on all the history, and like part of Star Wars was shot there. It really feels like a larger than life venue for porn, you know?
It is. It's an astonishing experience when you first go there and they give you the tour. They showed me the part where was it the San Francisco River? I don't know, some river, the only place that flows
Yeah,
above
the
ground.
Mission River, yeah, it actually flows right next to my house now. Yeah,
Oh,
it goes
yeah.
from like the basement, and then it's right next to my house and right next to the baseball stadium actually here.
Do you feel a little connected to the Armory? God rest its soul.
I
Inside of
don't
River?
know. I feel like I've had so many experiences. They're both good and bad because I
Yeah.
was working there like 4 or 5 days a week as a cam model. So it
I love
really
that.
become, yeah, it was a weird thing when I first moved here. It was definitely like, I was waking up at like 8 a.m. every morning, getting ready, going into the city, camming, and then like coming back with rush hour traffic.
Oh.
It was a very strange experience to like have in the porn industry because I feel like no one has like a quote unquote like 9 to 5 porn job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it definitely started to feel like, where it was like, oh, you're going into the city, you're taking a lunch break, and then you're like camming more. It was a little bit of a strange experience, but I really feel like just the sense of community and the amount of people that were always coming in and out of the building, you could definitely make a lot of connections there.
Yeah, for sure. I bet. That sounds like it sounds like a bit of a grueling experience, but it sounds like a really cool opportunity to have, to be able to do that, even if it might kind of get super tired after a bit.
Yeah, I feel like my experience through going there so much, it definitely had a lot of a Silicon Valley kind of vibe, as kind
Mhm.
of a lot of the companies in the Bay do, where they try to make everything a thing for you to stay at work and work more, where they're like, oh, we have free alcohol here, we have a chef here so you don't have to leave the building, and it's just like all this stuff, and be like, oh, you don't have to go home, you can just cam more and sleep here. It just definitely started to feel like that whole kind of thing that my partner's in tech, and they tell me a lot about their work, and it's like, oh yeah, we had that too, and it's like that's where it all comes from. So
For sure. I feel like that tech grind is so toxic and also so
mhm.
pervasive. It really, like, you start to develop a sense of self that is dependent upon productivity and how much work you're doing and how much money you're making and how much you're benefiting somebody else that doesn't necessarily trickle down to you, maybe
Mhm.
ever. And you just, like, your identity is dependent on it. And when you really take a step back, it's like, actually fuck this, but it's hard to have that perspective when you're in it, and also it's hard to, like, what are you going to do, like, just not work and pay your bills? I mean, that sounds like a cool fantasy.
Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like that's kind of the whole work culture in the whole Bay Area as a whole that is kind of pervasive. And I feel like Kink definitely had that, but at the same time, I feel like there was such an opportunity where you could just like really meet anyone in that building in the porn world in just a very kind of natural way. But at the same time, it's also a very strange experience to be working and having like tour groups go through, where it
Hmm.
definitely feels like you're working at almost a tourist attraction in SF when you're like in between a cam shift and you're going to the bathroom or something, and there's a group of tour people like going by and being like, ooh, a porn star.
That Okay, so my experiences with camming, I cammed in a studio in the valley. It
Oh,
was
really?
Yeah, it was sort of I'd go in for like 4-hour shifts a few times a week,
Hmm.
and I liked it, but um, I kind of ultimately have a love-hate relationship with camming. I like the work that I've done to, like, revolutionize it for the VR industry, but
Hmm.
when you're a cam girl and you're just in your shift and people are not saying anything, you have 100 people in your room, you're
Yeah.
trying to engage them and, like, have a discussion, because, like, if you're not tipping me, I'm not fucking myself. Like, that's how that works.
Yep.
But you're Yeah, but you've got all these people that are watching you and they're not fucking saying anything. It feels like you're in a girl's zoo on the internet. And so to take that experience and place it into the armory where you have tourists who are also kind of treating you like a zoo exhibit, just
Yeah.
really, damn, girl, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was, but I feel like it makes you I think it made me a better performer in the long run just because you're in that building. You took the 45-minute train ride or whatever. Like you have to really have your performing game there, or you feel like you're almost like, why did I waste this whole day? So
For
I feel
sure.
like it really made me a better performer. But yeah, I think that's also just kind of larger issues of the Bay Area. But yeah, I think camming's really ruling. I still cam a lot, but I think you almost just have to treat it as, for me, I'm like, this is my bedroom. This is my cam room. If you're not contributing, you don't need to be here, basically.
That's a good view.
Yeah, you almost have to be a bitch about it.
Oh, you do? Yeah. I don't know if they think we're doing it for our own benefit. Like, I just really want to spend an hour getting ready so that you can not pay me. That's
Mhm.
not how anything works.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of that where it's like people think it's like a dating site, and it's just like this site doesn't allow anyone to meet up with anyone, you know?
Yeah, you grossly misread the situation like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Um,
But I've met some of my best friends at the Armory. Some of my early shoots resulted in some of my longest, deepest
mhm.
friendships.
Yeah.
That's why I met Sin Sage. Sin Sage is fucking ride or die as hell. She's one of my dearest, and I met her on set for, I don't know, one of the lesbian bondage sites. It was really
Mhm.
cool. They had made this life-size Barbie doll box, and the story was that she had like kidnapped me from a park or something and brought me to her basement and made me her little Barbie doll.
Oh
And
my God, I didn't realize that was you. I've seen that box so many times, like on Tumblr and stuff.
it was so cool.
It's so weird
Yeah,
when you like know porn so specifically just from like the internet, and then it's like, oh, that was me.
yeah, exactly. Oh man, it was wild. But yeah, and thus a friendship was born from that
That's so
Barbie box. It
awesome.
was so hot, and like there's no air circulation inside of a Barbie doll box, FYI. So I was like sweating. I was disgusting. Can't believe she ate my pussy after that. But
That's
here we
so
are.
hot. Yeah, we've been working with Sage at Trouble Films, I think for the last like 3 or 4 years, and they're so great to work with. The first time I worked with them, I was just like, oh my God, they like invented strap-on porn in my mind.
Yeah, just quite an experience.
Yeah.
Sin is gonna be visiting in a few months, and I'm so psyched just to show her my world in Austin and take her places or take them. Is Sin does Sin use they them?
I think she, her, I think I might have
Okay,
used they, them because I feel like I use that about everyone.
okay. I just want to make sure I'm being respectful.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but like we're gonna go on a date. I'm gonna take her on a little date in Austin. It's gonna be so much
Oh,
fun.
that's so cute. Is
Yeah.
there like any sort of porn scene really in Texas? I know they just passed a very restrictive law, but before
Yeah, for
that,
really really. Not really. I think there's probably some fetish stuff here and there. Nothing I've really engaged with. But they did just very recently pass a law. Governor Abbott, fuck him so hard. Passed a
not a
law that
fan.
he's not a fan whatsoever. It is illegal to pay someone to have sex with you. It is
Mhm.
illegal to pay someone to have sex with someone else, which porn, you're a felon if you shoot porn now. But also, if you really sort of unpack that, I'm a Texas resident. If I pay a cam performer on a cam site for a private show to like have sex with her boyfriend and she's a Texas resident, does that make me a felon? Who
That's a
knows?
very good question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's too much to ask that legislators really put some thought behind the laws that they pass. Apparently, that's just asking the world of them, but yeah, it's pretty fucked. And the one upside, God, this is such a, it's not an upside. The one benefit that I have gained from it is that that law, and also they passed a law that you have to be over 21 to work at a strip club, whether you're a dancer, a bartender, a valet, anything. So a lot of people are out of work. A lot of especially young women in abusive relationships don't have that resource to get them out. It's infuriating, but that sort of sparked the fire in me again to get back into sex work activism. And so I'm sort of in the process of I'm working with Mike from the FSC. He's going to be introducing me to
Mhm.
some people, some organizations out here, and I want to get that get that fire going again and do whatever I can because, yeah, everybody hates us.
Just like the age limit thing on porn in general, if or stripping, it feels so strange because it's just gonna. I feel like it's just gonna create this whole black market that people from 18 to like 20 just like almost can't get paid, or they're gonna get underpaid in way worse situations.
Yeah, yeah, it creates a cottage industry of victimizing young people who really need support above all.
Yeah, it's such a bad situation. It honestly, I find a lot of similarities between athletes and porn performers and sex workers as a whole. And I feel like it's almost relates to what the NCAA does, where they restrict anyone under like 21 of making money off their like bodies or like being able to like become a professional and stuff. And it's like putting all these people in these like situation where there's this appeal for them and people are making money off of them,
Mhm.
but they're not going to be able to make real money off themselves, since it's going to be this whole black market. And it's just, I feel like going to be such a real problem.
Yeah, that's appalling. It's terrible. Like just treat people with respect and professionalism. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Yeah, it just feels so strange that it's, you can legally be an adult at 18, but then there's all these restrictions on top of it. It just seems so bizarre.
But you can definitely go die in a field for your country.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like especially going overseas, you really see how strange or like even 21-year-old drinking laws are compared to other countries, where it's just like, well, you're an adult, why would you not be able to do all the things?
Yeah, it's absurd. It's fucked.
Yeah, so how do you usually like prepare for a scene? Like, do you usually work for other companies? Do you do content trade often? Yeah, how do you kind of decide who you work with?
So these days, I kind of took a break from performing because I was
Hmm.
working on the VR side of things, doing like mostly marketing director, chief marketing officer for different VR porn companies. And between that and my own company, which I had founded with a friend, I just didn't have the time to go be on set for hours at a time. So I took a bit of a break. And mostly during that time, I would only shoot with my friends, like people who I wanted to spend time with anyway, and because we were shooting, it felt productive and it felt like
Hmm.
um, I was very much in the sort of tech grind headspace where anything I'm doing has to be productive, has to be making money, has to be towards some goal, which I still am, but less aggressively. So yeah, I would shoot for my friends. I would shoot if my friend was going to be on set, then I would shoot there or work with whomever, but just in a more limited capacity. And now, living in Texas, there's not really a porn scene here, so I mostly just shoot myself in my apartment for OF. Um, and it's very different. So back when I was performing regularly, I would wake up. Uh, I would make sure that I got a decent amount of sleep the night before, so I'd be
Hmm.
refreshed. I would have like some juice or something for breakfast, but nothing too heavy, just enough to make sure that I had energy to perform well. Shower, blow dry my hair, do base makeup, and then I'd finish the rest on set unless I had a makeup artist.
Hmm.
I always had a bag of lingerie, high heels, and a few like wardrobe pieces that just lived in my car in case like
That's just ready.
yeah, like I'm at the grocery store, somebody flaked, and I need to go straight to set right now. I'm good to go, and that definitely happens, or it did for me back in the day. Um, and so yeah, I would usually the night before, if there was a script and they had the foresight to send it to me ahead of time so I could practice it, I would run the lines a little bit with like a neighbor, and I would pull whatever wardrobe I wanted for the next day, and then leave early, stop at Starbucks somewhere along the way, and get to set and sit around doing fuck all until they finally were ready to shoot the pretty girls, and then sit around again until we're ready to shoot the dialogue if there is any, and then the fuck stuff. And yeah, I guess for prepping that was kind of it. I mean, they called it the do your girly stuff is what they say when you're on set, like, oh, do you want to go do your girly stuff before you shoot sex, which means douche, which they don't say. That you could just say, would you like to douche? And I know I would not, actually, but good to know. So that was kind of confusing. I didn't really realize what they meant for a while. But I just kind of like baby wipe super well and I don't know, rinse a little, just freshen up. But yeah, that's kind of what I would do to prep. I don't know how deep we're going in the paint here, but
Yeah, no, that was a very good answer on like what an actual day on set is like, because I feel like people don't realize how much there's just waiting around sitting on your phone while someone
Yeah.
sets up lights that take way too long for some reason, and you're just like, why is this taking 2-3 hours?
Seriously, it's sitting the fuck around and you can't do anything. You can't really get work done because there's all kinds of, coming and going and they might pull you to go shoot photos. So even if I
Yep.
brought my laptop, I'm not going to get anything productive done. And everyone's being chattery and sort of politely talking to each other, even if it's like, hey, I don't know you. I'm probably never going to see you again because you're here for like a month and then you're going to be done with porn, but we're going to play nice for now because, we're humans and we've got a heart and care about each other. But yeah, just a lot of that. Though that's also a really great way to connect with other performers and sort of network and forge bonds going forward is that sitting around doing nothing and just connecting with each other. So, I mean, I liked that aspect of it. It's just, it gets to be so much when you think about like the amount of hours you're working in the day versus the amount of hours you're sitting around and you divide like how much am I making today by the time I'm spending between leaving my house and coming back. Like it really kind of sucks if you break down the math like that.
Yeah, I feel like all day shoots in LA are such a normal thing where you're on set for like 12 hours and your scene's maybe an hour long.
Yeah, exactly. And like the time that your call time is never when you actually need to be there unless you're running late, in which case they are ready to go and you're holding everything up and there's no winning. But yeah, there's just I got really fed up with the really long big productions. Like it felt cool to be on a set that was a really big production
Mhm.
because it's going to be something you'd be proud of. But especially like if I'm like an extra, so I'm not being paid, a sex rate. I'm being paid a few $100 to really sit around and do nothing while other people are doing fun stuff. That just it was untenable for me in the long run.
Yeah, I feel like since content created has become more of a thing, it just makes you feel like, why does it take so long to set this stuff up?
Exactly. I mean, I moved into my apartment in October after really kind of getting into OnlyFans for about a month and a half at that point.
Mm,
OnlyFans took the place. I had just dissolved my company that I had with my co-founder. So I had this big gap in my life where I don't have my project. I don't have a big project that is mine that I can be proud of. Whether it's successful or not, it's my thing and I'm learning through it. Like the company that we closed was called Gonzo VR, or yeah, basically. It was named after my
yeah,
dog.
definitely.
We had a 24-hour live stream in my living room on an RC car. There was a VR camera and people could drive around my living room 24 hours a day. But through that, I learned
Wow.
robotics. I learned
That's
how to
so
code.
cool.
Yeah, I was soldering cool projects all the time. They were really dorky little robots that served very little purpose, but I was learning from it. So not having that anymore, OnlyFans sort of filled the gap where I had never really been a content producer because I hate editing, because I hate listening to myself and watching myself.
It's so
Um,
hard.
yeah, which is weird because I'm a huge narcissist, but I guess that one is just a bridge too far for me. But so when I moved in here, I wanted it to be something where I can shoot pretty much any direction. I've got like cool neon lights on the fireplace. I've got a cool backdrop that's like a rad bookcase with cool bones and skulls and shit, just like everywhere. And I have lights set up everywhere, so it's not a big production. I just turn on the light, set up my phone, and click go. Um, so doing that and knowing that like I can pump out a full scene in under an hour, even if I'm dicking around. Why did it take 12 to shoot? Frankly, not very great content sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like that's the weirdest thing about shooting like mainstream porn and then shooting your own stuff is like, I feel like there's all these expectations with mainstream porn where you're like, okay, this is gonna be the critically acclaimed thing. This is gonna be the thing people really care about and take seriously. And you have like these 2 or 3 terrible days of long days on sets. And then the thing you make on your own is the thing that gets acclaimed. And you're just like, why? Why did I go through all of this and all this hard work for a mainstream film that just got, some people saw it and then no one really cared after that.
I think what it comes down to for me, because I very much relate to that, is that, and I'm working on this, but I have a hard time believing in myself. I have an easy time believing in someone else because I assume everybody else is
Mm,
an actual grown up and knows what they're doing, which isn't the case, it turns out. And so it's taken some time and effort and introspection to learn that, like, actually, I've got this. I'm fine. I have a vision. I have experience. I can trust myself to do something capably. And just because someone else seems like they are a more capable person doesn't mean that their vision is necessarily going to lead to some, critical acclaim, like you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's definitely, yeah, just viewing other people's projects is almost more important than your own.
yeah, because you have to believe in yourself. That's tough. Who has time for that?
Yeah, so like how did you specifically get so interested in VR porn? Like I don't really know anything about it. I've used an Oculus once or twice, but not for any porn.
I tried VR for the first time very briefly, I think at E3 in like 2009 or so.
Wow, so
Um,
that's very early on to VR.
yeah, it was quite early. And basically, especially back when I was, full-time performer, any new technology I tried, I would think of it in terms of how can I fuck with this? Or how can people watch me fuck with this? And with VR, it was so clear, it was so apparent. But it was super early, and I went on the XBiz boards and talked about it a little bit, and the fucking dads on the XBiz forum were incredibly dismissive because they're a bunch of boomers. But I was really excited about it. But I'm not a famous porn star, and I certainly wasn't back then. I knew
I mean,
that.
I think you kind of are now. You won an
Oh,
XBiz award. Like, don't doubt yourself.
it's hard. Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
Yeah,
But
of
um,
course.
but yeah, it was like, okay, this is going to be cool. Someone's going to do this. I'm not going to be the first performer they shoot. Maybe after a year or two, I can convince someone to let me do VR porn. And then one day I was sitting around in bed jerking off, as I do, reading Reddit, and I saw someone post about how they want to make VR porn, but they don't know how to find performers. And I was like, well, darling, you found one. So I emailed them. We had some exchanges, and eventually they flew me out to Maryland to shoot. This is kind of a fun story. I like to tell it. I showed up. We were meeting at the train station, me and this
Mhm.
producer who I'd been speaking with. I asked him to send me a photo, like on his phone, but his phone was broken. I guess his camera didn't work. Actually, he just had a shitty phone, but he didn't want to say that. So I'm looking around for this porn producer in this train in DC. I see a mom with her kid, some business suit dudes from the Hill,
Yeah.
which they like to say in DC, and some teenager. And I'm like, well, where the fuck is this producer? And then this fucking teenager comes up to me, and I'm like, oh fuck, you're 18, right? And he was 20, so fuck me. But okay, cool, got it. You're gonna pay me whatever. Let's just do the damn thing. So I asked him on the ride, like, so are we shooting like at a studio or is it like someone's apartment? Because we shoot in our houses all the time. We don't get
Yeah.
fucking permits.
Hmm.
What the hell is that? Um, and so he told me it was his apartment. I was like, okay, yeah, sounds legit. We get there. It is his dorm room. His roommates are playing Dungeons and Dragons
Oh
at
my.
a table. They look like a bunch of, white dude, well, not all white dudes, but like just a bunch of dudes in college. And I show up looking, I'm an entertainer from Los Angeles. I look like a toddler with permissive parents in my wardrobe. And
Mhm.
I just roll in there and I'm like, oh, you're playing D&D. I play D&D, and trying to talk to them about Dungeons and Dragons. They look at me like I'm a psychopath. So I'm like, okay, cool story. All right. I go back to drop my stuff in his bedroom where we're going to be shooting. I come back out. It's a fucking ghost town. They have fled the room. And yeah, I shot in his dorm room, 180-degree 3D video. So I was the only person in the room because it captured the whole room. And I basically just treated it like a cam show. I talked to the camera like it was a lover, and I wanted to fuck them. And it was really good. It was the first time I watched porn of myself where I really felt engaged with it. It felt incredibly humanizing, and
Mm.
incredibly authentic. And I knew that I wanted to do VR a lot. And so me and that kid ended up becoming business partners, and he's still like my best friend today. But
Oh
yeah, so that
wow,
was right into it.
that's amazing. That's like such a heartwarming story that you guys are still making stuff today.
Yeah, well, we don't work together anymore, but he moved to Austin the same time I did, and he's a good kid. He would hate me if
That's so
he heard
cool.
that, but that's okay. But yeah, so after that, it was a bit of a torrential time in my life because I was at the very end of my marriage, and this dude wanted to work with me. He wanted me to become his business partner. And at the time, I was married to someone who didn't believe in me enough to start my own porn company. He thought he had to do
Mm.
it for me. And it's like, wow, I just came off of this trip where this person I don't know believes in me enough to want to be business partners on this incredibly huge like tech project, but the person who's supposed to believe in me the most doesn't. So
Mm.
I started VR around the same time I was going through a divorce and changing so much of my life. Started doing boy girl, which was whatever. Um,
Yeah, I feel that.
yeah. But it became something I was really, really passionate about because I'm interested in technology. I'm interested in learning just in general. I just like to learn things.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a really cool space because there was only one other VR porn company at the time. And so we came into it, we shot VR video, but we were like, okay, here's the deal. This is going to catch on. Bigger companies with more money and more resources are going to come in and we're going to be pushed out of this space. So we need to do something that has, a little bit more of a moat, a little bit more defendable. To use the fucking Silicon Valley terminology, something that was more
Yeah.
of a blue ocean. So we abandoned, we did the 180 3D, I did 360 3D. I made a 3D 360 VR camera rig using foam board and gummy bear duct tape and rubber bands and GoPros. It's
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was a bitch to actually shoot with, but yeah, we just realized that like video isn't it. This isn't going to be the defensible place in the market that we really need to be if we want to have longevity. So I believe we were the first to do volumetric video in VR for porn, which is basically it's video, but it also captures like spatial data. So I would set up a time of flight camera, which was a Microsoft Kinect, basically, and I would open a program and set the capture space on the three axes, the X, Y, and Z axes. So I would basically create a box in space and I would tell the camera, capture everything in this box in terms of video and the spatial like data, like how close or far the person
Hmm.
is from the camera, ignore everything else. And then I would take that video capture and place it into a digitally rendered environment. So what you had was a very photorealistic, I mean, a truly photorealistic performer who you could sort of lean back and forth and just see, different sides of them. And it was really cool. So we did that for a little bit, and then we used that to make a dating simulator. So I shot really short clips of myself. I would have to start and end in the exact same position so they could flow together. But we made a dating simulator so it feels like you're in a cafe with me. And I introduce myself and we talk a little bit. And I'll say something and then you have three options that you can respond with. And if you're a douchebag, you lose points. If you're nice, you gain points. And there's this hidden point system that you don't see, but it's being calculated. So if you say something too forward or too sexual before you've like established a rapport,
Hmm.
I'm fucking gone. I got shit to do. Goodbye. So it was a little bit of a social learning tool. Um, and it felt cool because it felt like you were almost really engaging with a real person in VR. And then we decided like, why don't we just do that? And so we did the first VR live camming,
Yeah,
and we created, yeah,
when was this? Like what year?
that would be the end of 2013, early 2014.
Wow. This feels
Yeah,
very advanced for like 2013.
there were no consumer grade VR headsets available. If you had a VR headset, it was a developer's kit. And so it was very much before its time, which I think is why it wasn't super successful. But it did a lot for me. But we patented a capture technique where it was a 3D 360 VR live cam, but instead of using 12 cameras to create that, which you would have to do if you were truly
Hmm.
live streaming all of it, you'd have, up, down, left, right, front, back with two cameras each direction,
Hmm.
which is a lot of data to stream. It's
Definitely. I can't imagine how big the file is. Like of that.
it simply wasn't approachable, especially at the time. So we created a technique to create a photosphere of your space and then broadcast 3D video on top of it. So only using two cameras. So it was incredibly efficient and robust. And it felt almost seamless. So we licensed that to Cam 4, and thus was born Cam 4 VR, which is no longer, but it was cool when it lasted. And
Yeah, I'm
that
like
was
I cam on cam 4. I don't remember that option.
Yeah, no, it was for about 2 years before the license expired, and we decided to just sort of close that company and pivot to like a more mainstream, which was what Gonzo VR was. That was not porn. I should have made that clear. Gonzo VR was not porn. That doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, and so Cam4 hired us, and that was my first time working for a porn company that wasn't dependent on fucking myself, literally, not figuratively. Anyway, yeah, and that was sort of when I started my path to working on sort of the exec side of the porn industry.
Wow, that's so amazing that you just like that's like the most tech way to get to have like a porn career. That's so interesting.
It was cool.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I've never really dived down that whole thing. Eventually I really want to. Yeah, I think the most VR I've done is I think my ex roommate had an Oculus that was hooked up to a PlayStation. I played a game and then I felt like very sick very quickly, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm good with this for now, but I
Yeah.
definitely eventually want to check out like the whole porn realm of it. I'm also kind of afraid just to be like having it on and masturbating in a room and then someone walking in and being like, "Oh, what are you doing?"
Oh my God, Chelsea, someone might see you masturbate? That's horrifying.
But still, like with the mask makes it feel like way more.
I know, I feel you. I'm just using you. Yeah, it's definitely, it's a lot. I think there's VR is, it's a lot more mainstream now than it was back in my day, but it's still something that I think there's a lot of social learning that needs to take place with virtual reality and like respecting other people's boundaries and, space. Like don't
Mhm.
take pictures of people when they're wearing a VR headset, don't touch someone when they're wearing a VR headset. Like this is someone who is slightly incapacitated, so treat them as such. But yeah, I hit me up. I will give you a course in VR porn if you so desire. You cannot get me to shut the fuck up about it, as you might notice.
It's
Um,
great though. I feel like it
yeah,
really highlighted something that no one else has talked about on this because I feel like everyone else is just like, oh yeah, I just like do stuff for mini vids where I shoot for this company or that company, which is just like
yeah.
so interesting to hear more about. Honestly, just like a whole different way to experience media.
It was incredible for me because it took me from being a porn performer that people sort of only regarded in terms of flesh on film, and it gave me a career. Frankly,
Mm,
I've traveled all over the world. I've spoken at tech conferences all over the world. I did a TEDx talk. I was the chief marketing officer for a tech company. I mean, it was an adult headset company, but it was still like a tech company, and that's something I never
yeah.
thought would be possible for me. And now I'm working with this really amazing team on an app called ViRo Space, which it's all CGI. Um, but it's these interactive experiences. They connect with pretty much every haptic device. So when you're watching it, your toy is activated based on what you're watching. And it's really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's one, I got to basically direct and star in one. So I got to go out and do like the whole motion capture, like wearing the suit in the really big like studio. And it's really cool. They made a digital avatar of me that is like way cooler than I am. Like she's a babe. I don't know how she does it, but yeah, so that's really cool. And it's sort of like my career sort of come full circle because now we have a virtual camgirl who streams on Cam4 and Chatterbait named Vex Ruby, and she is a human individual in a mocap suit who broadcasts as a digital avatar, and she wears her haptic
Wow.
toys, and it's all in real time. She has facial capture and everything is streamed in real time, and she is incredible. She's just an absolute gem of a human or a sprite or what have you. But it's really cool. So now I'm sort of back to working in VR and a kind of camming and live stream that is very much a departure from what I started out with, but it's still, I feel, incredibly revolutionary. And I think that they call it lewd tubing or VTubing, like virtual tubing or what have
Mhm.
you. Um, and I think it's poised to become a very popular option for people who maybe want to explore their sexuality in terms of like live broadcasting, but for whatever reason it's not accessible to them, either because it would be dangerous for their safety or their careers to actually be on camera, or it's just not something they feel comfortable or safe within themselves doing. I think it offers an opportunity to do that almost like phone sex,
Mhm.
but with a very strong visual component, and it's really cool. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like that there's just gonna be more ways to interact with like sexuality. I think that's just so cool. Yeah, when I worked at Armory, most girls there didn't masturbate to regular porn. They're like, oh, I only masturbate to like sort of animated stuff or anime or like stuff like that. Where there's like a lot of people who are super into that. So I think it's just opening more forms for, sexuality, which I think is really amazing.
For sure, absolutely. I think it's something that I've observed can be both exciting and threatening to performers in different sort of headspaces. Like some performers are so thrilled that they want to do it themselves, which hell yes, I want that for them also. Some of them feel like the virtual digital performer space is like taking something away from them. Whereas I think the people for whom that is their thing, like that's their thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not taking away your customers because your customers are watching you because you're what they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very separate sort of fan base. But I think it's a very robust fan base that is very eager to have something new and exciting come around to be offered to them.
Yeah, and I feel like you see in all other sorts of things, like the rise of esports and everything, you're seeing so much more happen on a digital level that isn't, just a person in a room. That's entertainment. I think that's like just really important to for this industry to grow in all these different ways with all different sorts of technology and creativity. And I feel like that's kind of been the story of porn since its origins. That's always about growing and kind of becoming the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, historically, that's what we've done. I mean, people love to talk about how, like, oh, porn is always at the forefront of technology, which was the case for a while. I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like that's the case so much anymore. I think, like, okay, having said that, we were the first to do a lot of things technologically within VR and we were a porn company, I don't necessarily think it was porn pushing that along. I think it was just inquisitiveness. But for a while, like streaming video, online payments, VHS versus Betamax, like porn was the deciding factor for
Mm-hmm.
those things. Um, and I think that we have the opportunity to sort of reclaim some of that, which I feel like we've lost as an industry. I think that with certain companies, certain enterprises coming into the space and stealing content and kind of fucking up a lot of shit for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
won't name names. I think that as an industry, we got a lot less adventurous because the money flowing through porn sort of uh, decreased significantly enough to where we didn't have the opportunity to just throw money at something and see what happens. So I think that that really sort of halted some of the progress that as an industry we're known for. But I think that we're in a place now that like that could be feasible again.
Yeah, I also feel like just the whole content model now where there's sites like minivids or clips for sale or stuff like that. People can experiment a lot more as performers because performers now have a say in what their content is. Is before you just kind of showed up on set and they're like, okay, you're gonna wear this. This is the theme of the movie, and you're kind of stuck with that. Which I feel like now it's like if you want to be creative, you can go and make the weirdest porn you want, and there's probably gonna be some sort of audience for it because you have your own platform for it.
Definitely. I think platforms like Clips for Sale, ManyVids, OnlyFans, all of those have been just a godsend for performers because for the longest time, I mean, I didn't want to make content. That was a lot of work and I didn't want to do it. I could just get paid several $100s to go and fuck a beautiful stranger. Why would I
Mm-hmm.
spend the time rolling the dice to see if someone even wants to buy this? But it's created a central marketplace for performers to put themselves out there and put their work out there. And it's sort of created an audience in a space where they know that they're going to find whatever is up their alley. And as a result, performers can and are sort of encouraged to be so much more industrious now in terms of creating their own style, their own content, whatever they want to make, whatever they want their brand to be. And we as performers, even if someone isn't creating content, we have so many skills that we have to master. You're your own brand advocate. You're
Mm-hmm.
your own marketing director. You're, editing, lighting, doing makeup and hair, crafting an image, like all of that. There's so many skills that you develop. And with this, it allows us the opportunity on our own terms to hone those in a way that benefits us completely. Because when you create content that you own and distribute personally, you can profit from that in perpetuity. You're asleep and you're making money because someone in the
Yep.
Netherlands just bought a video. It's very good for us, I think.
Yeah, I think it really is where it's just I think just so much different than even when I entered the industry about a decade ago. It was still very much like if you're gonna pay rent in porn, you have to shoot 2, 3 scenes a month, you know? It was very
Yeah.
much that way where everyone was hustling trying to get those gigs. And I feel like it's just such a different world now where it's about like keeping your overhead low. It's about, just continuously making content, really knowing when your releases are coming out. I just feel like it's changed so much.
It feels empowering. And I
Mm-hmm.
hate when people ask me if porn is empowering because it's only ever for that person's benefit so they can feel good about jerking off to you. And it's like, you don't ask your barista if she feels empowered making your coffee. Could you fucking get off it? But it does feel empowering because back when I was performing for other people exclusively, it was such a feast or famine mentality. Like there would be months where it's like, fuck yes, I am fucking kicking ass. And there would be months where it's just a desert. And I like, not only am I not making money, but I'm really critical about my own worth and value because, you know,
100%.
it's a toxic mindset, and anything that we can do to supplement that opportunity is always going to be great.
Yeah, that's where I feel like it almost comes back to like the whole thing between athletes and sex workers, where when your career is going down, you almost have this whole existential crisis where you're like, well, this is all I've done the last 5 years. What am I doing? Did I waste all this time? And it like can go into this whole spiraling thing because you're like almost just basing your entire life around these 4 or 5 companies hiring you. And now it's just so different where you go to AVN, no one's really trying to kiss up to these like major studios anymore because everyone's too busy doing content, trading all the hotels with each other every single day. Which
Yeah,
when I first went, it was so different. It was everyone's on the convention floor, everyone's trying to get shoots essentially.
absolutely. And back in the day, when was your first AVN?
2015.
I think mine was either 2010 or 2011.
Mm.
And the show floor is so vastly different. It used to be all production companies, and
Yep.
now there are almost no production companies, and it's mostly cam studios and products. And that is huge. It's interesting to sort of like take a snapshot of the AVN show floor each year and sort of analyze like who's missing this year, who has been a strong presence in the past, and who's suddenly made an appearance on the scene that we'd never heard of last year. And you really sort of can mark the trends in how, production really sort of shit the bed a little bit, and cam companies just soared because that immediate personal connection versus, something recorded and incredibly inauthentic just held more value for the consumer base.
For sure. And I just feel like they're investing more in the performers where they're realizing you're the one who's making the site, as opposed to before. I feel like the production company is like, oh, we'll find the next whoever. We'll find the next girl who's going to be the famous one or whatever, which I feel like
Yeah,
is just so different now.
they had to wake the fuck up and realize who's making the money for them. And it's
Mhm.
always been us.
Yep.
Like, welcome to the fucking table, y'all. Yes, it's us. You need us. You can't make porn without us. Without
Nope.
us, you're an empty, shitty mini mansion.
This is why this is a performers podcast, to talk about shit like this.
Fuck yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Man,
So
I had a feeling what I forgot. Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you. I don't want to keep you all day.
Yeah.
So okay. Yeah, I'm sure there's a few of these podcasts I've done that I'm like, I'm sure we could talk about this stuff for like 3 hours easily.
Yeah. Shoot, what are your questions?
So what's one thing that you wish you could do in your career that you haven't so far, if there's anything?
That is a very good question, and it's one I try to avoid because I'll just dwell on what is missing instead of appreciating what I have. But I suppose um, it would have been cool to be a contract girl. I probably would have hated it, but I think there's a certain clout that goes with it that I would have enjoyed in my youth. It's not something I desire now because that doesn't hold the value for me. I don't define my own success through that lens anymore, but I think in my early days, that would have been something that I would have really had a thrill with. I wish I had done more parodies. I did a couple cool ones. I did The Room,
Yeah, I
and
saw. Wait, you
yeah, and
did The Room?
I did The Room, which everybody's first response is, "Isn't The Room a porn parody of itself?" Which yes, it is, but I made it.
Who did you play?
Um, fuck, what was her name? I should know. My friend
I
made
am
that.
so full in right now. I'm
It was amazing. I was also Princess Bubble Cum in Ask Venture Time, which might be it's definitely my top 5 proudest porn scenes. I got to be with
I
April.
yeah, I definitely need to tell my partner about that. They're like the largest Adventure Time fan.
Hell yeah, it was cool. But yeah, I wish we
Wow.
could parodies.
I'm The Room thing. I'm starstruck now. I'm like, you were in The Room porn parody. I'm in SF, so that's where The Room was shot. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of my favorite movies. So bad. Love it so much.
I told Tommy Wiseau that I was in the porn parody of his film at Comic-Con, And he said, "Oh, really?" And then he signed a basketball and gave it to me, and that was the extent of the conversation. I didn't know what I expected, but I didn't expect him to hand me a basketball. So yeah.
That makes me so happy. Wow. What? Why was he signing basketballs?
Good fucking question. I don't think anybody knew. I don't know if he knew why he chose to do that, but I don't think the people at the booth, I was like, "So what's the deal with the basketball?" And they were like, yeah.
It feels like a thing he would bring where he'd be like, it's all American. Like all of his stuff, I feel like always just goes back to he's like, it's so American. It's great.
Yes, very much an enthusiast of the
Yeah.
Americana, that one.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I've never seen it live before. I've really wanted to go to screenings. My partner is so against it, where they're like, why would you watch that movie? It's so bad. I'm like, that's why.
You just answered your own question, my
And
friend.
also, like the first 30 minutes, you're like, this is definitely porn. Like you're like, there's no way this isn't porn. There's like 3 sex scenes in the first like 30 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I feel like it wanted to be porn, but it didn't have the audacity.
Yeah.
Can I
Wow,
pause
that
real quick?
was, yeah, of
Sorry,
course.
2 seconds.
Okay, so I have one more question for you. This is kind of like the out there question, but let's say tomorrow something could be totally different in porn. What would you have it be of anything in the world that could just magically change?
Um, there are so many things. Can I make a list?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'd love it if porn would stop being so fucking racist. That's
Yep,
a problem.
it's a real big one.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love to never be cast as a MILF ever again, which I probably won't because I don't really perform for other people anymore. But man, it sucks. I shot so many her first teen lesbian experience
Mm-hmm.
scenes when I was 23 entering the industry. And then the next day I would be cast as a MILF at 23. Could you fucking not? Like, why are we fetishizing motherhood this much? Like, if you are attracted to older women, you're attracted to older women. If you're attracted to responsible people, cool. But why do we need to bring the fact that she has a child into it? Like, that is unsettling to me. Not a fan of that. Um, I wish people would pay for their fucking porn.
That
Um,
too.
I wish rates were higher and not constantly decreasing over time. Like that's not how compensation is supposed to work because
Not
inflation
at
is
all.
like, can we get a cost of living adjustment, please? No? Okay. Bummer. I this isn't really porn, but it affects us deeply. I wish people would get the fuck over it and stop stigmatizing us and stop
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, discriminating against us professionally. Like people think the porn industry is terrible and it ruins people, but it's not so much that. It's that when you are ready to be done and retire, you can't because society won't let you because they won't let you
Yeah.
be hired anywhere. They won't see you as anything but a whore, which like why do you hate whores so much? And like people feel trapped because they can't find work outside of the industry because they're marked for life having been naked on the internet. That I think actually kills people.
It does. Yeah, it keeps people in situations that aren't good and shooting for shitty companies when they just don't have any other options, I feel like too.
Yeah, exactly. So those are a few things. How about you? What would you change?
I think I would just try to fast forward content trade for a few years so the studios have less power.
Yes.
Yeah, that's I guess like the thing that I'm hopeful for post COVID and everything is I'm hoping all these like long-term studios kind of die out
Mhm.
and just kind of lose power and all these performers realize how much more powerful they are because especially these contract models like let's say someone like an Angela White or a Riley Reid once they realized that how much money they could make on their own without these studios and the next wave of performers realize that I don't think these agents are going to be as powerful anymore. I don't think these studios are going to be as powerful. I think it's just going to really start to change. But even seeing like Caden Cross beat direct now, I feel like that's such a difference than when I came into the industry. It was still very much like, oh, if you're a performer, you're a performer. You're never going to become a director.
Absolutely, absolutely. They really work hard to separate the workers from the means of production. And COVID, if there's any upside to it, I think is finally ending that in a very serious way and showing performers that like you still have to make a living, obviously. You're gregarious, you're capable, you're, strong and powerful, and you can do this on your own. So do it. Once you do it, once you realize that you're allowed and you can actually, support yourself, it really, I think, has opened a lot of hearts and minds amongst the performer base about what we're willing to put up with. I think there are a lot of performers, especially big name performers, who are probably never going to go back to set because why would they? They make so much more on their own. And even if you're not making so much more on your own, you're at least doing it on your own terms, in your own house, on your own schedule. And fuck yes to all of that.
Yeah, I feel like there's just like the whole wave of like alt performers in like the mid 2000s. Like even people who had like a lot of potential and wanted to get into directing just didn't have the opportunities. Like if you look at like all the stuff Sasha Grey directed, it was like one film. And it's like she was one of the biggest people in this industry. And even like she got like no opportunities to direct. It just feels very ridiculous in this industry that it was so different then. And now it's like, oh yeah, there's tons of director performers.
Yeah, there's one company that I think really sparked a lot of performers to become directors, which I think was good in that regard. But I also feel like it was toxic. I don't want to say the company because I don't want to start shit. But I think one of the things that happened was performers suddenly had the opportunity to direct, which was not an option for us for the most part. And because like, oh my gosh, my friend has this great opportunity, sure, I'll shoot for you for like a cut rate because I want to support you. But because that was sort of their business model, they made, a whole practice of encouraging performers to hire their friends at a lower rate than they were worth, which just lowered the overall day rate to some degree across the industry. And maybe I'm speaking from my own perspective. I'm certainly not like a big name performer who can call the shots in that way, which, some can, but from where I was at, it was like, shit, well, I was happy to do this for my friends, but now I really fucked myself in the end because now that's my rate now. That's what they think I'm worth. And that sucked. But
yeah, I feel like maybe now with more content trade, I think it's maybe a little bit better for like performer directors because not only do you like know what the performers are going through, I feel like it also is like a real collaborative thing where it's not just being like, oh, here's $600. Will you perform for me instead of your usual $1,000 rate or whatever? It just feels like now there's more of a chance to be like more collaborative. And that's why I feel like it's going to be better in the long term because I don't feel like you're going to get as many like consent violations on set because you're not having like a director being like, oh, well, the owner of the company is going to be so mad at me if you don't like do this sexual act, which I feel like definitely happens on like mainstream sets where there's like this pressure.
Yeah. And I don't know why I ever thought that was my problem to deal with. It sounds like you need to have a talk with your boss, dude.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I think, is there anything else you want to cover? I think you've given us a pretty good overview of your career, and I learned more about VR porn than I've ever known in my life, which is awesome.
It's my pleasure. No, I think that's it. Can I promo some shit?
Yeah, promo all your stuff. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm on OnlyFans. It's onlyfans.com/Ela Darling, or just go to eladarling.com, eladarling.com, and that'll take you where you need to go. And then check out ViRo PlaySpace on Steam, which is a video game platform for the CGI. It's really cool. You can see my experience. It kicks ass. And check out Vex Ruby on Chatterbait and Cam4 because she's an angel. She's a darling, wonderful creature, and I adore her. So yeah, that's my stuff.
Yeah, go check Ella out. Thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thank you for having me, babe.